super excited to have Pastor Lorrie Gibbons joining us today. For those of you who may not know, or if you're watching this later and you're like, who is that? Pastor Lorrie serves as the district superintendent for the Western Ontario district, and has done that for a while. And so I grew a little worried when I was advertising this call, because I used the word outgoing and kind of alluded to the fact that it's common knowledge to those of us around the office, but maybe isn't to everyone, that Pastor Lorrie's not planning on returning. And so this is kind of his get things in order before you wrap up tour. So although I asked him to come. So Pastor Lorrie, let's just start. For those who may be watching that don't know you, that haven't worked with you or whatever, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? So we'll start with, like, where did you grow up? How did you become a Christian? Why do you love Brantford so much? Yeah, just share a little bit about you.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Owen Sound. That's where I was raised. At 16, I left home and moved to Alliston, Tottenham, Toronto, because I kind of wanted to distance myself from any faith in God. So I grew up in a Christian home, Pentecostal church, had a great upbringing, but decided to take a little journey away from faith. A young girl who knew me, and she wasn't serving God either. So I think she wanted to, prove her point, invited me to go to a concert with her. And we went to see Andre Crouch in 1973. And sitting in the first balcony of an Andre Crouch concert, I came back to Jesus. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that, because in 1973, Andre Crouch was what I would consider to be a pretty heavy duty band and ministry. And, they were saying lyrics like, ain't nobody do me like Jesus. In 1973, that was pretty cool. So, I gave my heart to Christ sitting in the first balcony, and everything changed. Then went off, of course, to Bible college and to Peterborough, met my wife. When we left Bible college, we were married. My final year, we had gotten married, and Dick Green invited us to come to Brantford to assist him in the ministry there. And that's how I ended up becoming involved in my life in Brantford. We came in 1976, and I assisted Dick until 1980 in Brantford. And then in 1980, I went to be the lead pastor in Lakemount, which at that time was known as Grimsby Pentecostal Church. I was there for only 10 months when I got elected, which used to happen to youth ministry directors. I got elected at a district conference without any notice. I was actually sitting there at the time without any thought of doing this at all. And my name got put up. It's a long story, but I wasn't even on the first ballot. So I had no clue we were going to do this. Ended up, I got elected at that conference to be the youth ministries director. I was serving in that capacity till 1986. In 1986, Bruce Schwint came. He was pastoring an evangel church in Brantford and asked Debbie and I to come back to the city and plant a church in the west end of Brantford. So Debbie and I came in 1986. Matthew was 2 years old, and we came and planted a church in Brantford, and we're there for 14 years and have lived in the same house ever since 1986, and I never left Brantford. So there you go.
Wow, that's pretty good recap. You mentioned Matthew. Can you tell us, I didn't put this in the notes, so hopefully you get their names and everything all right, but tell us about your family. Obviously you're married, wife's name, kids' names, and if you can do grandkids, that would be pretty impressive. But if you can't, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Although I'll warn you, Benton's on the call.
Oh, he is.
Better at least know his kids' names.
Okay, yeah. Well, Debbie is my wife, Debbie Gibbons. She was Debbie Scott. She was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie. Our first son is Matthew. He married Anna, and my two grandchildren to Matthew and Anna are Knox and Tessa. Knox is 9. I think Tessa's 5 or 6 now. And then Todd is my second son. He's married to Becky, and he has 2 boys. and their names are Rhett and Kip. And then I have Benton, who's married to Rebecca. And we now have 2 grandchildren with Zion, and now a newly born baby daughter to Ben and Rebecca, and her name is Abigail, and she's only about a week old. So
Nice. It's an interesting time to be a grandparent, and having, like, becoming a grandparent, and I assume not being able to see the baby and all of that. Have you had a chance? Maybe, you know what? Maybe I won't ask that question just in case. I don't
yeah,
want to say anything that would be convicting.
yeah,
So we'll just
yeah.
move forward. So you spent a lot of time as a youth pastor. I love your story of how you became the youth director and how you actually had left youth ministry. Like, you had become a lead pastor and you show up at conference. And I remember you telling me once, like, you didn't even know, it wasn't even a voting year. I mean, the craziness of the job being something you vote on is in and of itself weird, but it wasn't even a voting year. And all of a sudden your life is changing and you had hours. I don't even know if it was hours, maybe minutes, to decide whether you were going to leave your church and do this or not. I say all of that to lead up to this question. Do you have any, like, specific memory of as a youth pastor, like one story that's just amazing, that stands out to you from when you were a youth pastor?
Yeah, sure. When I was a youth pastor, I went to visit a young couple. The wife had just given her heart to Jesus. They were Debbie and I's age, which at that point I was 22 as a youth pastor. I went to visit the guy in the summer. He was a teacher. He just started his teaching career. He was about 24. I went to visit him. He didn't want anything to do with the gospel. He wouldn't let me come into his house. Basically told me to get off his porch. He didn't want anything to do with this. But I noticed that he was an athlete, and I was starting to run a ball hockey league. So I said to him, I know you want nothing to do with church and everything. That's cool, but I need a centerman. So would you be willing to come and play on my ball hockey team? Well, he agreed to do this, and then his wife agreed to go to ceramics and stuff with Debbie. So we'd meet every Monday night, and he'd go to ball hockey with me. My wife would go with his wife to, they did sewing courses. They did all kinds of stuff. We ended up becoming great friends. Long story short, me and some of the other young guys in the youth group and stuff, we led the couple to the Lord. He became my right-hand man in youth ministry as a sponsor. Over the years in Brantford, became our closest friends. When we came back to Brantford in 1986 to plant a church, he and Nancy were the first charter members of our church. They joined us to plant that church, and he went on to have some children. They became quite well known internationally as Jonathan Lambert, who is now in charge of ARC. And Jonathan was my first baby dedication. And it's interesting that he gave his life to planting churches. His mom and dad gave their life to planting churches, planting a church with us. And the rest is history. And that is incredible when you understand the impact you can have on discipling people.
Yeah, wow, that's quite a unique circumstance. Although not unique for you. I find every time I'm talking with you and something comes up, it's like, somebody who knew somebody who is doing this amazing thing, and you seem to be incredibly well connected, which is pretty awesome. So let's shift focus a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style. And so let me ask you this. As you have become a more experienced leader, we know what that means. How have you encouraged and invested in young leaders?
Well, I always had a policy, even when I pastored. Well, first of all, when I pastored, I believed the concept of twos. The Bible talks about they went out in two, and that was a strategic plan for doing ministry, was going in twos. I've always believed that I'm not called to do ministry by myself. I'm called to do ministry with a team. When I first planted New Life in Brantford, the first thing I said to my board, as soon as we're able to, I want a partner in ministry, and I'm not hiring someone just to do some jobs for me. I'm hiring a partner. I'm hiring someone who's going to live and breathe this with me. And I want someone who has different gifts than I have. I'm not going to go out and get somebody who's exactly the same as me. In ministry, I believe it's a team effort, first of all, and surround yourself with people with other gifts. Why duplicate yourself? I meet some lead pastors, and their associates, their assistants, all these people look and sound exactly like them, and that's fine. That's what they choose to do. But I never did that. I'd surround myself with people that had other gifts, because I got strengths and I got weaknesses, and my weaknesses are not a big factor when I've got other people who can cover those weaknesses for me and help me with it. And it's all about a team, investing in others. And my concept has always been, I think at one point, the president of Coca-Cola was 38 years old, and someone asked him how he planned to be the leader Coca-Cola needed. And he said, I'm just going to find people that know more than I do and surround myself with them. And I've always been a team player. I played on a team since I was 3. When I was 3, my dad put me on a team, and I've been on a team ever since. I meet a lot of guys and girls in ministry, and immediately when I talk to them, I can tell they've never played on a team in their life. You know, you play on a team, you're part of a team, and you have a team concept. You look at ministry differently than if you're a lone ranger. You've always done everything on your own. You've always been an individual sport person. You've always been, me and no one else. I'm not being critical of those people, but I'm just saying, for me, being on a team, working a team, having a team play together, work together is a huge part of my philosophy of ministry.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you said something that now I kind of know where you got it a little bit. But one of the things I've noticed as I've gotten to know you is you surround yourself with people who, for lack of a better word, have different giftings, or maybe the expert in a certain area. Like, I've noticed, different people, if you're trying to lead in a certain way, you'll have people around you who are maybe more gifted that way, and really shine that way. Can you talk a little bit about how that's maybe paid off for you? Not paid off, that's probably the wrong word, but obviously it's a conscious decision, given that you've just said what the president of Coke said. Like, how has that been a benefit to your ministry?
Well, I think first of all, it's helped me to realize the importance, as if you're a lead pastor, or you're a district superintendent, or you're in charge of the youth group, you're the youth, like whoever your leader, you can't be threatened. If you're threatened, you can't do this. There are a lot of leaders that are threatened. They're worried that somebody else is going to get the limelight, and then people are going to like them better. And then people are going, like our identities, we need to deal with some identity issues in our ministry sometimes. And you know what? If you've got identity issues, it affects how you can work with other people. I got no identity issue when it comes to people thinking that some of my district executive are better speakers than me, and they should do timeout, and they should speak here, and they should do. I'm not threatened by that. I've had more opportunities in my ministry than I could ever imagine. So I'm thrilled when young leaders are stepping up but you got to be unthreatened. The second thing is, I always told my staff, I want your input. I want you to build this thing with me. So we had a policy. When we would have a staff meeting or come behind closed doors, I would say to all my staff, you can talk to me about anything you want, as long as you're Christ-like. You don't start swearing and yelling at me. But you can be strong. You can say, I disagree with you, Pastor. I don't think we should. I need your input. I need us to build this together. Behind closed doors, you can say whatever you want to me, and I'll say whatever I need to say to you, and we'll work it out behind closed doors. When we walk out that door, we're unified. We never talk about what we've said to each other. We never use it against each other. We never say negative things about each other. If I got something negative to say about a staff person, we'll be behind closed doors, and we'll talk honestly together and we'll work it out. But when we go out, we're unified, we're one. And you know what? My staff was always honest with me. They saved me from a lot of problems. They'd say, Pastor, I don't know what in the world you're thinking. This is crazy. Why are you, or when it comes to what we're preaching, or when it comes but I value their input. They're pastors too. They're leaders too. They can help me. They're not trying to destroy, but you gotta have confidence in yourself. There's a lot of people that lack a lot of confidence, and so they can't deal with others in that way because they're threatened. They're worried about their identity or their importance in front of people. You got to learn to share in that way. If you do, I believe you'll be a greater leader. I believe that God will bless you. When I was at New Life, I used to say to people, said, like, our church grew, but listen to the team that I had. And I tell people that. I go, well, of course we grow. Of course we've grown by a couple of hundred in a year. I got Mark Collins as my associate. Mark Collins is loved and adored by half the city of Brantford. I got Mark Jean Cola doing youth. He's the best discipler I've ever seen. I got Andrea Jean Cola doing children's ministry. I've got Jason Clue doing junior high. Like, I don't have to do anything. I just have to show up. I got the best team in the whole nation. And of course, our church is going to grow and flourish. And that's how I viewed it. And I gave them all kinds of opportunity. I asked all my people to speak on a Sunday morning, at least once a month or once every 2 months, and be involved. And I gave them opportunities. And my goal was to make them the best pastors they could be and outshine me. And when you do that, you got nothing to lose. So
there's a lot of profound things in there. That was really, really good. It's interesting when you talk about identity and how we have to recognize that our identity is not in being the star or the person up front, because that is something that we see in a younger generation, is the almost and it maybe it's a oversimplification, but there's a lot of young leaders that want to be youth pastors so they can be the one up front, or they can be the one up there. How have you managed that tension? Have you ever dealt with, I kind of want to be, and how do you surrender that to God and move away from it? Or is there people in your life that you've had that just will, slap you silly when you need it, kind of thing?
Well, yeah, like I'm going to be candid with you today. That means that I can risk some things. It'll be easy to misquote things that I say, but if you do that, don't worry about it. I'm almost at the end anyway, so I'm not going to be threatened by it. But I'm going to try to make sure I'm conscious of what I say here. When I was 3 years old, my dad put me on a team, and by the time I was 16, I'd won championships with teams I was on. Had my name in the paper, had my picture in the paper, had my name on our news broadcasts in our little town. So I'd had some success. I was never bullied. I'm not saying that people that were bullied are wrong at all, but I was fortunate being an athlete, growing up like that. I was never bullied. I never felt like people put me down. I was, I played high school football. So you play football. So by the time I go into ministry, I've had some successes. I fear for people who have been bullied, have never had any successes, felt like they were insignificant, have no confidence. And then all of a sudden at 17, they discover that because they're a musician, people love them. And now they seek the platform. They seek something that they've never had all their life. And you can see even in their ministry that what they seek is glamour and that moment on the spotlight, and all the girls in the youth group love me, and everybody thinks I'm wonderful. And they get their whole identity from something that gave them the ministry, and they've never had that in their life. And you can see that that's what they seek. They seek to be on the platform. They seek to be in front of people. They seek to be the main person, and that's harmful. I've never ever had that because I've always felt good about myself. I tell people that about raising kids. Find out what your child is gifted at and then give your child the best chance to be the best they can be in that. So that, it doesn't, I did it with athletics because that's what my boys were told they had to do, and they did it. So that's how it all worked out. But, and that was the way it is. And they all seem happy with it. But if my kid had been an artist, then get them an easel and get them some lessons. If they're a musician, like if every person can find what they're good at and get some confidence in themselves, they will function completely differently than if they don't. Having confidence in yourself is not, there's a difference. Confidence is important. Conceit is wrong. And being inadequate all the time is wrong. Not wrong, but it is not the way to go. You got the two extremes. You got the overconfident, cocky, conceited individual. Then you got the person who's been beaten down all their life. They have no confidence. They feel inadequate. They're always threatened. What you want to find is a place where you don't have conceit or inadequacy. You have confidence in yourself. And that's a huge thing. Teach your teenagers. Find something that helps them to become confident. Find their giftings and then bless them by, I took a young guy once in my youth group, and he felt like he was such a loser. And I began to work him in certain areas of his giftings and give him some profile and get him working with me in the youth group and doing some things. Like he was into computers, but I just got him working in his giftings. It can change a person's life. So I just emphasize that in our leadership. Have some confidence in yourself, but don't seek glory. Don't seek fame. Seek just to be a servant and use your gifts. Use what you got. I used athletics, all my ministry, because that's who I am. Not everybody likes that. People are threatened by it. They don't like athletes, never liked me in high school. Now they don't like me in the ministry. But the bottom line is that's who I am. So I just used what I had, and God used it,
Yeah, I love that. It's almost that, giving God what's in your hand, and like, here, I'm just, whatever I have, God, you have it, and use it for your own kingdom. And then recognizing the confidence that we can have in our giftings. That's really good. Shifting slightly, a pressing topic amongst young leaders, and I find this pressing as I talk with young leaders, is the separation, or I'll say it this way: the separation of our faith when it comes to our personal relationship with Jesus and our ministry, in the sense of developing, messages or devotional topics or whatever. And that tension of every time you read the Bible, or every time you have a worship moment, of turning that into something you're giving out instead of something you're taking in. Can you talk, after all these years as a leader, like, how have you managed that tension? And then maybe follow that up with a glimpse even into ways that you connect with God and the scriptures.
Well, first of all, I'm a Christian first. Before anything else, I'm a Christian first. That's never going to change. Whether I'm in full-time ministry or not in full-time ministry, whether I'm called a pastor, whether I got a title, my greatest title in my life is I am a follower of Jesus. I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. When I gave my heart to Christ at 19, I fell in love with the Lord. He broke my heart. I had so much baggage. I had so much going on in my life that I need to be forgiven for, that when I was forgiven and I was given a second chance by the Lord, I was overwhelmed by his presence, and I've never lost that. I still love his presence. I still love being with Jesus. I still love getting in his presence. Some days when it's pressure's heavy and people are yelling at me and everybody's freaking out, I just got to go somewhere and get alone with Jesus and remember that he's walking with me. I'm in his presence. That's number one. Number two, whether people agree or not, I don't know. It's up to them. But number two is I'm a husband and a father. That's more important to me. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't give a lot of time to ministry, but it's not my priority. If I lost ministry because of whatever reason, not hopefully morally, but because of whatever reason, full-time ministry, I'm still a husband and a father and a Christian. I'm not out of business at all here. I'm good. and it might be interesting. I've often said Debbie and I have a backup plan, and that's why we never worry about our ministry position. Because if I lost being district superintendent, I got a guy in Brantford right now that'll let me be a taxi driver, and my wife can teach piano, and we're good. And I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
District superintendent to taxi driver. I could write a book. I get on Huntley Street. I think that'd be a great testimony. But I had nothing to lose here. Like, it's not about ministry. Some people, if they couldn't be in a leadership position in ministry and have a title and a position, they probably could have an emotional breakdown because they are so. But listen, I know it wouldn't be easy, and I know it's easy to say, but truthfully, I've always said I'm a Christian first. I love Jesus. If Jesus doesn't think I should be in full-time ministry right now, but I have to be in a secular position, there's nothing wrong with that. God could use me maybe more. So my identity is in that, and waiting in his presence. I always find that I surround myself with his presence. So I do a lot of driving in the car. So, I used to kid people. Now you wouldn't maybe do this because you have podcasts, but you got to understand I'm old, right? So like I used to tell people, I know how far it is from Brantford to Sudbury. It's 7 CDs. That's how far it is from Brantford to Sudbury. 7 CDs, 7 praise tapes, 7 CDs to get me to Sudbury. Like when I'm in the car, I'm in his presence. I don't listen to the news. I don't listen to garbage. I listen to praise stuff. I worship the Lord. I wait in his presence. I carry a little New Testament with me. So when I'm sitting in a waiting room, I can take a New Testament out and read the scripture while I'm waiting for my doctor's appointment. And it's not that conspicuous because it's a small New Testament. I use every moment of my life and figure out time-wise how I can be in his presence. At night, often, I don't do it as much in the morning because I have a lot of early morning appointments. I figure, if I can get up early and work harder than others, maybe that's going to compensate for me not being as talented and gifted as somebody else. So anyway, but at night, I wait in his presence. It's the craziest thing. You're going to think it's nuts, but I have a record player and a bunch of LPs, and I'll sit in his presence at 11 o'clock at night and just read the word and worship. I love being with Jesus, but it isn't so I can get another message, and it isn't so I can get another, illustration of, I just wait in his presence. And out of that, I'm inspired. Out of that comes meditations. Out of that comes thoughts, ideas, and all kinds. But it's being in his presence. So I know I'm rambling on about some of that, but that's kind of how I function.
No, that's great, because like you have the years of experience. For some of us, it's, we're a little bit newer in this. And I know when I first started in ministry, that was a real tension. And it was not that I was, okay, I'm only opening my Bible because I want a sermon, but I really found, like, as I'm reading scriptures, you're like, oh, that's a good sermon. Oh, that's anything that hits me, is sometimes hard to discern whether that's something for me or, oh, that's something that I'm called to share or whatever. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate you mentioned the outflow. You didn't use that word, but it's almost like as a result of being in God's presence, inspiration comes. You're going to get, thoughts for a message or whatever, but it is that being in his presence and seeking his face first. I really appreciate that. So
let me say one other thing.
Wayne. Yeah.
One other quick thing, just to know that I do set a goal. I've always set a goal in my ministry to read. And so I've endeavored to read a book a week if possible, and to be in his word too, with some small plan that might help me to read through the word of God. But when I read the word of God, I'm not reading it so I can say I read it. I'm reading it so that the Holy Spirit can make something jump off that page to my spirit. And I read the word that way, not just, well, I read 3 chapters so I can get 3 chapters behind me so I can brag that I read the whole Bible in a year. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's great. Reading the word is going to change your life. But when you read it, ask the Holy Spirit, reveal something to me. Let it jump off the page. Let Logos become Rhema. I know you don't want to go there because the theologians will have a nightmare over this. But, there is a sense of the general word of God in my mind, general word of God, which is amazing. Get into it. But the rhema is that specific word that jumps off the page, that hits my spirit, and then I can stop there and start to meditate on that all day. Like reading the word with purpose and reading a book a week is a great idea. So.
Well, yeah, thank you for interrupting me and doing that. So now I'm going to throw a curveball back at you, and I'm going to say, what's something that has just come alive recently that you've read, whether it's a passage or a whole thing? What's something that God has shown you recently?
Yeah, well, the book I'm reading this past week is Sammy Rodriguez's book, because I love Sammy Rodriguez. He's one of my heroes. I mean, I would not say he's a personal friend. I have to be careful. Everybody's my friend. But I know Sammy Rodriguez. I know his heart. And he said in the book that oftentimes we are set aside in society and we believe it's a curse. So everything gets shut down. We get put in a room by ourselves. We get set aside for whatever reason. And he said the disciples were set aside. Everything was shut down. Jesus died on the cross. They believed it was all over. In fact, they were set aside in a room and not allowed to even go out of the room or out of the house because they were wanted people without a savior. They were at the end of the rope. They believed it was all over. It was then that God really used them and ministered to them in that season. That was where God really came and showed himself in a powerful way. When they were shut down in a room by themselves, crying out for some reason that their Savior died, Jesus came. He was alive. That was the beginning of the gospel. Then when they were set aside in the upper room, they were told, be set aside, cut away from society. We're going to isolate you. You're going to do that until the Holy Spirit comes. It was then that the Holy Spirit came and began to turn the world upside down. Sometimes we're set aside in society and we believe it's the worst thing in the world and there's no reason for it. And why would God do this to us? When God's really doing, or even if he's not doing it, he's working through that moment to bring us into the greatest days of our lives. And I read that recently in his, I think, second chapter in that book. That's powerful.
Yeah, it's really good, especially as we think of being set aside in lockdowns and maybe not able to go the places we want to go. And you're just like, oh, that hit me as you were sharing, just like, yeah, maybe these set aside moments we have right now are something God wants to speak into. Anyway, we'll let that just sit there. It's good. Sure. Right before, I want to talk about some of the things that I think are crucial for young leaders to understand. But before we do that, I just wanted to give you opportunity. The Western Ontario District, what you serve as the superintendent, where I work, we serve to support the great churches of our district. Can I ask, how do you see the role of the district evolving in the next 10 years?
Yeah,
within local church.
Yeah, interesting. I'll make some general comments on that. I think we need to become more gender inclusive. Mm-hmm. And we are. We're getting more and more female lead pastors. Mm-hmm. Great thing for us all. I mean, how can anybody doubt that Wendy Payne's an effective lead pastor? I mean, mm-hmm. I'm just using one example. How can anybody say that Patty Miller's not probably one of the most prominent leaders in our whole nation? This is a great day for us. And I encourage that in the next 10 years, I hope more and more of this will happen. Mm-hmm. I believe cultural diversity is very important. And you're going to see the emergence, I pray, of more leaders who are culturally diverse and gender inclusive. And I think that's a major part of what the future of our fellowship needs to become. And we need to include. And that's an important thing. And the next generation of leaders are going to have to make sure that that is provided for in the way that we operate together. And I can see it happening now. And I think that's amazing. I think that relationship is becoming more important. Gone are the days, I believe, where the big show needs to happen and Sunday is all come to the gathering place where we have a bigger show than you. I don't think people are going to care that much about it. People are just going to want to get together and experience the presence of the Lord and have a relationship together. And I think it's going to change. I don't know that people are going to feel as obliged to get together every week together when they can go online. And so online is going to become a thing of the future. And presently it is the thing, and it's not going to go away. We're not going to go back to not being online. We're online. And that's going to become something that's a very big factor. Thank God, because now hockey families can be admired instead of put down all the time. I was always ticked about that all of these years. People in the church say they're a hockey family. They're never here on a Sunday. They don't care about the church. No, they care about the church, but they got a commitment to a young player that they know is going to make it to the pros. And, I always had a sensitivity. I tried to do whatever I could to make sure that family had an opportunity, because we put them down all winter, but we don't put anybody down who goes to the cottage all summer. We don't say to them, oh, they don't care about the church. No, they're going to their cottage at Brayside. Well, that's nice and great. God bless them. But quit putting the hockey family. You know what? Now my son says, yeah, this is great. I can sit with my family and watch online my church every week, even if we've got a hockey tournament on a Sunday. I know that's not relational to everybody else. It's just where I live. But the bottom line is, I think that's going to change everything. I think this online thing is amazing. I think that's going to change. I think how we look at church is going to change. I think that relational evangelism is going to become more and more important, because it's not trying to get people to a service. That's not our goal. It's trying to get people in our life so we can share Jesus with them and bring them to Jesus, and then disciple them personally every day, and then introduce them to our church family. But I think it's going to, so I'm saying a number of things there, but I think all that's going to change.
No, I like that. Absolutely. I see all of those things in the future. So it's nice it's affirmation for me. I'm not crazy. No, it's good. Okay, so let's and with these topics, I know that there is with each thing I'm gonna bring up, we could probably spend an hour on it, like with each one.
Right.
But I do think there are some topics that are in my mind crucial for every young leader to understand. So I'm gonna give you a topic, and I'm gonna invite you to make a couple comments. Okay, so first up, we have what we call self-care. So this is talking about, like, how do you balance looking after yourself, and what are some areas that you've seen leaders struggle over the years, and how can they better care for themselves? That's a really loaded question. You only get a couple of comments, but.
Well, I believe that, we need to be good time managers. I recognize that a number of young leaders tell me that, they're putting way too much time in their positions. But when I would ask them their time management skills and track themselves, they can find a lot of wasted time. You have to be a good time manager. If you're going to balance your personal life, your family life, your ministry life, you got to be a really good time manager and conscious of how much time you're putting into what. You got to be a good time manager. I think the other thing that is important is you got to take care of yourself. If I had any area in my life that I regret, and I've said this many times lately, I regret that I probably didn't take care of myself the way I should have. I'm working harder now taking care of myself physically than I did for a lot of the years of my ministry, and it didn't pay off. In the end, I ended up with a heart attack. I ended up, with a diabetic issue, almost lost my leg over it. If I could go back and redo anything, I would watch, first of all, how I took care of myself physically. I was fortunate in the ministry because I had mentors, and I had people I could go to and talk to and share anything with, and they would help me. They'd pour into my life. But I'm here to say that our health network has been available to our pastors When Debbie and I went through a deep crisis, and if you listen to the workshop we did, we talk about it. We needed counseling, and my lead pastor that had been my mentor made arrangements that we would have counseling, and we went through that. That helped us. I think people need to know there's no stigma attached to that. There'll be times in your life where you need counseling. Maybe you need professional counseling. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody's gonna turf you because you went to get counseling, because if they do, come to me, because I had counseling. So if they're gonna turf somebody, kick me out because I had counseling, or else we would never have made it. Bottom line is, get care, get help yourself, have people you can talk to, have some mentors you can confide in, have some peers that, have accountability groups. Don't be a lone ranger. Don't do this alone. You can't do it alone. You need help. So I'm just really significantly saying, take care of yourself physically, take care of yourself spiritually, work a good week of work. Like everybody in our church works 40-hour work weeks, then they give extra time to the church. So we need to be able to do our 40-hour work week and give a little extra time to the church to equal our best lay people, right? But don't be extreme in that. Be balanced, work hard, play hard, and make sure you balance your schedule out. And time management is important. And those are just some priorities.
Yeah. Okay. Shifting. So second one is the tension around personal relationships. So there are many different aspects of relationships that we deal with as pastors. Can you talk a little bit about managing the relationships in your congregation and in your community versus your friendships? And then maybe even touch on how you maintained boundaries with the opposite gender.
Okay. Well, that's a huge subject. It is true that Debbie and I built friendships in our church. There's no way, but I would say to certain people who would say to me, well, why are you so close to that couple? We recognized, Debbie and I, that the couples we were closest to were the ones that were working with us in ministry. Like, not maybe in a paid position, they're all volunteers, but they were involved in ministry with us. So I'd say to people, you want to get close to me and you want to be my best friend, get involved in ministry with me. I'll see you at the ministry centers in the next few days. Like, the people closest to me were the people that were helping me do what we were called to do in the church. And so, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time with them, but they're my leaders. They're ministry leaders. So get involved in ministry and you'll become a friend. Like, so I did have those people. I was careful to make sure that I was available to all the people that needed my time and effort, and not just giving all my time to one couple or all my time to two couples or two individuals. I'd spread myself around. Debbie and I protected our home. I have to be honest, in raising the boys in that, my home was my sanctuary. And we didn't have a lot of people who constantly were in my home. I made a rule. This is my own rule. Debbie and I made the rule. We didn't go on vacation with couples. I saw so many couples go on vacation and they come back, they're not even speaking anymore. Like, we didn't do that. We went on vacation, but I don't need more friends to take the place of my wife and my kids. My best friend's my wife, and my best friends are my kids. And some guys need another couple to go away with on a weekend because they have nothing to say to their wife and they have no relationship there. So it helps them not to have to worry about that. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, I was careful not to get too involved with just one couple or just one person. Although we had close friends, we spread it around, and we were careful not to become, people who did everything with one couple all the time. And we were careful with that. Opposite sex, I always had Debbie involved with the girls in my ministry. So when I was a youth pastor, she's involved with the girls, I was involved with the guys. When I became a lead pastor, it wasn't as easy because Debbie had small children. I had women in ministry in my church. If a woman came and wanted my time in the church, I would see her maybe once with the doors open and my assistant close by. Then I would turn her over to a woman in the church. And they often didn't like that. They wanted my attention. But I'd say, I don't do that. I'm not great with that. I have women in ministry that I want you to be part of, and I'm going to introduce you to Doris Rome, and I'm going to introduce you to Andrea Giancola, and I'm going to introduce you to Wendy Collins. And I would be careful to not get caught in that at all. And I didn't drive in a car alone with females. I didn't, be found in corners of the church counseling after everybody left. Like, I was very conscious to be deliberate about that. Now it's interesting because it doesn't have to be with girls. It can be with guys because of, there's lots of issues with that. But the opposite gender, I was very sensitive about it. I was very conscious, not just of what might have happened, but how I might make another individual feel. I don't have to, have done anything to violate another person of the opposite sex. It's how I made them feel. What if they leave and say, I felt like he was making a hit on me, or I felt like he was making me uncomfortable sexually? I don't want to be in that position where it can be interpreted like that at all. And so I was conscious of that and conscious of how I made them feel and the interpretation of that. The other thing is I was always making sure that people were around me and that we were in groups and that we had my staff close by, and I was never in a room by myself. I was maybe almost oversensitive to this, but I never had that accusation laid against me. So I was very conscious of that kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you for being transparent about that. So the next topic we've already kind of talked about, which is the faith in ministry topic. The aspect of wrestling through remaining in the faith versus perpetuating the faith. And we talked a little bit about that tension. So I'm not going to let you comment on that one. We'll move by it. But the next thing I want you to comment on is this aspect of doing the job. I like to call it, the pursuit of excellence versus authenticity. And I don't believe they're mutually exclusive, but rather a tension to be managed. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in real life ministry?
Yeah, I just give me a little bit more of an idea what you're asking.
Sure.
Man. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I'm talking about the pressure to do the best and be the best and do it with everything you have versus being authentic and real. Because sometimes when we strive for, say, if we go back to the idea of striving for a platform or striving to be famous, right, within our youth group context, we're gonna get all the lights and everything's gonna be like fancy and slick and our schedules, versus the other side, which is all about being real. And mistakes happen, and as a real person, I struggle with dealing with stuff or getting things done on time or whatever it is. Like, can you talk a little bit about the tension between those two things when it comes to actually doing the job of ministry?
Well, I think that you have to be aware that the person I'm trying to please here is Jesus. I'm trying to please him. I'm trying to make sure that he's happy at the end of the day, that he feels that I did do a good job for him. And he says, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I will never, ever measure up everybody else's expectations. And I will never please everybody else, nor am I competing with everybody else to say, no, I'm the best. I'm better than this person. I'm better than that person. I'm just trying to be faithful with what God gave me. And I take the gifts God's given me, believing that he made me the way he made me. He gave me the opportunities, and he'll use me as I am. And I've always said, I'm like Popeye the Sailor Man. I am who I am, and that's all that I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm only Lorrie Gibbons with the gifts God's given me and the abilities he's given me. And I'm going to do the very best with what he's given me. But I'm going to recognize that there's other people out there that do it differently. I'm going to recognize there's other people with different gifts. And I'm not trying to compete to be the best. I'm trying to do my best. I'm trying to do the best that I can with what I have. At the end of the day, I am who I am. Not ashamed of that. And I'm not comparing myself to everyone else. and being able to rest in the fact that at the end of the day, I did the very best that I could do with the gifts that I have, and I know that that's the case. And I did it for the Lord, and I did it so that God could be honored and God could be exalted. And I'm not worried about what everyone else thinks of what I did. And there's days when, if I listen to what everybody says about me, I'd feel like a loser. I'd feel like, man, am I really that bad? Am I really, because I didn't please this person, I didn't please that person, and I didn't meet that expectation. There are goals you need to set. I agree. And you want to be as good as you possibly can be, and you want to reach goals. But the bottom line is, you can't become so conscious of, being a success in ministry that you are more worried about what you do than who you are. Who you are is who are you? What kind of person are you? Who are you really in your heart, in your life? When I look at myself in the mirror at the end of the day, it's not how much did I accomplish, but who am I? What am I really all about? Am I a man of integrity? Am I a man of compassion? Am I a man who's just faithful to the Lord? Or am I this legend? Some people are legend. The great ones never know they're great. Listen, Hulda Buntain. You got to know who Hulda Buntain is. Hulda Buntain comes to Braeside Camp. And she comes to speak 2 years ago at Braeside Camp on our Mission Sunday. Hulda Buntain. This lady is a legend. Presidents and kings know who Hulda Buntain is. She comes to Braeside, and all she can tell me is how wonderful Braeside is, how wonderful her facility is that she gets to stay in. She can't believe the food we feed her at the dining hall. Oh, this is unbelievable, or this is amazing that I get a whole weekend at Braeside and I get to stay here in this wonderful accommodation. Minister, they got to go, this is Hulda Buntain. She's the most gracious, kind, generous, thankful person I ever met. And I go, she's great. Then I have other people that come to speak at Braeside, and I'm sick of them by the time I have to spend one day with these people. Like, get them out of here, send them back to America. I can't stand them personally. On stage, they're amazing. Everybody comes from far and wide, but I get to know what they're like personally, and I can't stand them. I got to get rid of them by the time the weekend's over, because they're arrogant, they're self-centered, they're critical, they're bitter, they're petty. Who am I? Who am I? Am I really great? Well, if I'm really great, I won't have to keep telling you how great I am. If I'm really great, you'll just know I'm great because you're in my presence and you'll say, he's a class guy. You know what? Who am I really? And I have to often ask myself that.
That's really good. The last category that I wanted to talk about, and just again, I wish you could spend an hour on it, I'm sure, is just the idea of ministry transitions. So when it comes to young pastors, there may very well come a day when it's time to make a transition, whether that's from one environment to another or into ministry or out of ministry. Transition is a part of life. What are some short insights that you think every young leader should know about transitions in ministry?
Well, I think they should know a document that I put together years ago when I first became district superintendent. You'll find it on our website, I believe. It's called the Leaving Well policy, but it's not really a policy because certain people who didn't like the document said I can't enforce a policy. So it's a Leaving Well recommendation. It's a recommendation from the superintendent on how to leave well. And you need to read through that. That would tell you all the principles that I believe in leaving well. I think that you should leave well no matter what the situation is. I know that there are some difficult situations, and I know that there are some unfair situations, and I know that it isn't always right the way people are dismissed or even made to leave. But I would encourage you in your own heart to determine that no matter where you go and what you do, that you leave well. It will not benefit you to leave in a difficult way. Even if you're not treated well, if you have honor and you have dignity and you humble yourself and move forward, God will bless you. God will honor you, and I believe that when God is beginning to prompt your heart, you need to know that there are seasons in life and seasons in ministry, and God often will begin to bring to close where you are, because if he didn't bring to close where you are, you'd never move forward. You'd stay where you are forever. I've had people that in the last year of being in a place, things didn't go great. They seemed to have gone great up till that last year. And then that last year, there was some rough patches. I go, of course there is, because God's closing out your season. Like, if that wasn't the case, you'd stay there always. Like, why don't you understand that that does sometimes happen? And that just begins to indicate that you're moving forward, you're moving on, and transition well. Always say good things about the people that you worked for or with when you move on. Doesn't do you any good or anyone else any good to trash everybody on the way out. Take the high road and honor God in your ministry, and understand that the Lord, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And if somebody has done you wrong, somebody has done you dirt, someone has done you wrong, you can try to get your pound of flesh, and you'll only become bitter and angry and enthralled in this terrible battle you'll have to go through. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and they will not be off the hook. God will deal with them down the road if they did you wrong. But you want to move on so that you don't appear or even are damaged goods. You don't want that. You want to move forward healthy and whole. And sometimes that's not easy, and there's a price to pay for the pain you'll go through. But understand that you can keep your spirit right, you can keep your attitude right, and God will honor you. And if someone else is wrong, they will pay a price. You can't maybe make them pay that price, or even the district make them pay that price, but they will not get it. None of us get away with how we treat others. God is the one that will judge that. And vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So keep your spirit right, keep your attitude right, and understand too that when you're leaving, it might not have been a perfect setting, may not have been a perfect situation, but talk about the things that were positive and leave the things that weren't alone. And give thanks to people, whether they deserve it or not. Thank people, thank them, have a little class, and God will honor you.
That's really good. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today and to kind of share with us, a little bit of your insights from your experience to those of us who have less experience when it comes to ministry. But you and I do have a bit of an ulterior motive with this call. And I alluded to it in our last Zoom calls that there was something that we've kind of been talking about that I think is really the future of ministry within the student collective. And so I wanted to talk about this program that we've kind of come up with. And when I use the word program, that may be a little bit more more complicated than it needs to be. We've come up with this thing, and we're tentatively calling it the 5x5 concept. And the idea is to create opportunity for young leaders to spend time with a seasoned leader. And the idea is you get a seasoned leader with 5 young leaders, and you have 5 separate conversations that happen over a period of time on 5 topics. And the 5 topics are those topics we've just covered. So things like, self-care, personal relationships, faith in ministry, doing the job, and then transitions. And the idea is to get young leaders, like I say, to come and spend time with an experienced leader and kind of learn and glean from them, but then also provide input and even bless that more experienced leader as well as part of that. To be honest, you and I got to know each other obviously since I've come in this role, but this was one of the dreams that I shared in the interview for this job, where I was like, I believe, we need to get our young leaders with experienced leaders so that they can grow and develop, because our aim at Student Collective and even at Western Ontario District is that you would be in this for the long haul, and that you would be supported as leaders, and that you would be invested in. And so you and I've been working on this for a while now, and we've been having conversations and talking about that kind of thing. I wanted to give you an opportunity. I'll mention a little bit more about the actual logistics in a moment, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to share a bit of your perspective on this 5x5 concept.
Well, I think there's an obligation that the word puts on older leaders, that we're not supposed to, be threatened and hope that every young leader stays young so we can keep our positions. We're supposed to give them opportunity, and we're supposed to mentor. We're supposed to care for young leaders and pour our life into them to make them better than we've ever been. And that's a key. I learned that from my first lead pastor, Dick Green. When he hired me, he told me, "You're young, I'm old." He said, "I got 30 years of ministry experience. You're a rookie. You be the best you can be. You do the best thing you can do in this church. Get to know everybody. Become the best friends to all my board members, because you'll never threaten me. I got 30 years of ministry. You're 22 years old. Go for it, son. I am going to invest in you," he said, "and I will make you a better pastor and leader than I've ever been. That's my goal. I want to see you go farther. I want to see you do more than I've ever done in my ministry." And that's what we as older leaders need to be saying to young leaders. We want to invest that. And that's a principle. Second of all, I'm looking forward to doing it myself. I'm looking forward to having 5 young leaders who can invest in me. I know that sounds artificial. That's not true. You want to just tell us all what to do. No, it's reverse mentoring. It's going to be good for those 5 people that I take on. And I'm going to do this and lead by example. When I pastored, you always have to lead by example. You've always got to be able to do what you're asking other people to do. So I'm looking forward to taking on 5 young leaders to be with me in relationship. But it's reverse mentoring. They're going to speak into my life. I want to hear what they have to say so they can maybe help me to see it differently. It's going to be a relationship back and forth. It's not just me mentoring them, but they're going to mentor me. And so it's a 5-on-5 relationship. And I'm looking forward to being involved in it myself. I just would love to have 5 young leaders before I leave office pour into my life, and then ongoing relationship with us for the rest of our ministry and life, because we'll have 5 moments where we interact, but then it'll go on from there, and I'll know those 5 people, and they'll pour into me and I'll pour into them. And I just think it's amazing.
Yeah, and in our conversations, that's the things that just kept coming out was, this is something that'll benefit the young leaders because you'll get to know more people. The idea is you're not just having a relationship with those in your circle already, whether that's your lead pastor or if you have a multiple staff, but you get to get influence from outside your own context, and you get to grow relationships so that, the day when you come to district conference, you're going to see people, you're going to have relationships with experienced leaders and with other young leaders, and try to build the community that is, pastors. Because we want to invest in you. We want to see you grow as a leader and as a person. So as far as logistics, we're in the process of finalizing some of our conversation material. We're looking at recruiting leaders, and very shortly we'll actually be looking to recruit for our first go around of this program. And so if you're not already, you need to be following us on Instagram and Facebook, and know our website, studentcollective.ca, some of those things, because that's where all of this information is going to come from. Get on our email list, those kinds of things. So we're going to be putting this information out very, very shortly. I'm actually, this is being recorded, so I'm always hesitant to say, but our aim is to start this before summer. Like, we want to get these conversations happening. We want this to be going as soon as possible. And so it's not going to be an overly structured or overly, managed thing, but it is going to give us an opportunity for each of us to grow and develop as leaders. And so more information about that is going to be coming out very, very shortly. And you'll see that through our social media and email and website stuff. Yes, Pastor Lorrie.
The other thing that I would say about it is I envision that after having 5 sessions with my team that are going to be working with me, if something ever comes up in their lifetime that they need me to speak into, they'll have a relationship with me. They just pick up the
Hmm.
phone or send me a message. Like, we'll have a
Hmm.
relationship. So it may not be as valuable at first, but maybe in a year's time, they'll say, man, I need somebody to talk to. And they'll think, I'm going to call my mentor. I'm going to call him. I know him. I have a relationship with him.
Hmm.
If I can pour into their life at some point, that'll be there. It'll be available. At least they'll know me and I'll know them, and they'll have the open door
Hmm.
policy. They can get in touch with me whenever they want the rest of their life. I think that's
Hmm.
cool. And I can get in touch with them. Maybe I'll need
Hmm.
to call them. Maybe I got a issue of I need a young leader to speak into my life. Well, I don't know. I can just pick up a call and call them. They're my people, man. They're my team, right? I think it can
Hmm.
be a really good thing if we look at it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I the more we've talked, it's like win, 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 win. There's just positives through this whole thing. And so this is why, we're moving on implementing and making this happen, because we just don't see how this, well, we see so many benefits from it. And I absolutely love that. The idea of, we all face situations. You're like, who can I call that would have good insight into this, or have experience? Like, you build relationships with your mentor, and then even with the others in the conversation. It's win, 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 all around. I do want to be respectful of time, so I do just a couple of quick announcements. First off, overflow. In case you haven't heard, we are doing an overflow that is not affected by the stay-at-home order. One note that I want to make clear for people is overflow is a live um, event that's happening on Friday, May 28th, but we're actually also recording it for those who have internet issues and can't do live. So they'll be able to use that on Saturday, May 29th. So the idea is it's live, or if you need to use a recorded version, you can do that the next day. And so that is part of what we're working on. And you can actually see that when you go to register, which the registration is actually going live tomorrow. And I also wanted to mention for Overflow, one of the things I've been working on that you'll find out when you register is we're actually prepping a message for before the event and a message for after the event. So it's not just the event itself. There's actually, so it'll be a video that you can download and show, or I'm actually, I'm super nervous about this, but I'm including my transcript and an outline. So if you don't want to show my video, but you want to use the same topic to help them get ready, you can take my notes, edit them, make them your own, and do whatever you want with that content. And all of it is still there's no charge for any of that stuff. All we're asking for registration at Overflow is a donation to help us with the cost. And so when you see the registration, you can go through all of that. If you have any questions, that's why Nicole's here. She can answer any of those kinds of questions. I think the last thing that I'll mention is just coming up in May. We were scheduled to do in-person forums that would be in person and online. So May 6th, we were going to be at New Life in Brantford, actually, of all the connections there. And May 13th, we were going to be at Royal View in London. As of right now, the stay-at-home order actually ends the day before the first one. So we're not 100% sure, but the backup plan was always to go online if that's what we need to do. And so we'll keep information of that, but go ahead. The only thing that's different from normal forums is we are going to have to require registration because of what's happening. And so and making sure we have the right amount of people and all of those regulations. And Nicole gets to manage all of those things. She's doing great. So those are the things that I have to say. If there's anything that we can do to help serve you, we're always interested. Pastor Lorrie?
Can I make one last statement to the group?
Absolutely.
So the ministry is not easy. The ministry has some really unique things about it. It's not just another job. It's tough sometimes. But I often quote the movie A League of Their Own. And I'm into sports movies. In The League of Their Own, Gina Davis is the catcher. She's the star of the league. It's the women's league in the middle of the Second World War. Her husband comes home from the Second World War in the middle of the season and just going into the playoffs, and she decides that she's going to leave the team and go home with her husband. Tom Hanks is the manager. He comes and says to Gina, "What are you doing? We're just going into the playoffs and we need you. You're the greatest player in the league. You can't walk away now until the season's over, at least. Like, you got to stay with us and see this through." And she says to him, I can't finish the season." He goes, "Why? Why can't you do that?" She said, "It's just too hard." And he says, "Of course it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. It's the hard that makes it great." And when I heard that line, I thought, that's like ministry sometimes. You just say, "I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm quitting. I'm done." Why? It's just too hard. Well, of course, it's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody'd be a pastor. If it wasn't hard, everybody would get involved in ministry. If all you had to do was show up and put a nice little song list together and play around with a bunch of young people and have some parties, everybody'd be a youth pastor. Man, it's the hard. But it's the hard that makes it great. Because when it's hard, I get before God. I wait in his presence. He shows me a way out of the difficulties. He empowers me. He equips me. I grow. I become more mature. And I see a miracle happen before my eyes where I thought I could never get through this. And the hard makes it great. But don't think it's not going to be hard. Don't go into ministry thinking it's not hard. It's hard. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. But remember, it's the hard that makes it great. So I just leave that with you today.
And that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for joining us, Pastor Lorrie. I know you have a million other things you could be doing, and I appreciate your investment in us as young leaders. And yeah, I'm putting myself in that category. Yep, I'm a young leader. Okay. But thank you for taking the time. We so appreciate it. And thank you. For those of you who joined us, thank you so much for being here. Pray you have an amazing day and amazing ministry week. Thank you so much.